Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Skandam 6, 6th canto. From now on, the chandas will be there again, so it will be in tune. Chapter 1. Shri Parikshiduvacha Nivrutti Katita Adau Bhagavatayata Kramayogopalabdena Brahmana Yada Samsrutihi. Maharaja Parikshit said, O my Lord, O Sukadeva Goswami, you have already described in the second canto the path of liberation, Nivrutti Marga. By following that path, one is certainly elevated gradually to the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, from which one is promoted to the spiritual world along with Lord Brahma. Thus, one's repetition of birth and death in the material world ceases. प्रवृत्तिलक्षणाश्चैव त्रैगुण्यविषयो मुने योऽसावलीनप्रकृतेर्गुणसर्गः पुनः पुनः. O great sage Sukadeva Goswami, unless the living entity is freed from the infection of the material modes of nature, he receives different types of bodies in which to enjoy or suffer, and according to the body, he is understood to have various inclinations. By following these inclinations, he traverses the path called Pravrutti Marga, by which one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, as you have already described in the third canto. Adharmalakshana Narakashchanuvarnitaha Manvantarascha Vyarakyata Adyaswayambhuvo Yataha. You have also described at the end of the fifth canto the varieties of hellish life that result from impious activities, and you have described in the fourth canto the first Manvantara, which was presided by Swayambhuva Manu, the son of Lord Brahma. Priyavratottanapador Vamshastaccharitani cha Dvipavarsha Samudradri Nadyudhyana Vanaspatin Dhara Mandala Samstanam Bhagalakshanamānataha Jyotisham Vivaranam cha Yatedamasrujadvibuhu. My dear Lord, you have described the dynasties and characteristics of King Priyavrata and King Uttanapada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead created this material world with various universes, planetary systems, planets and stars, with varied lands, seas, oceans, mountains, rivers, gardens and trees, all with different characteristics. These are divided among this planet, the luminaries in the sky and the lower planetary systems. You have very clearly described these planets and the living entities who live on them. Aduneha Mahabhaga Yataiva Narakannaraha Nanogra Yatanan Neyatan Tanme Vyakyatumarhasi. O greatly fortunate and opulent Sukadeva Goswami, now kindly tell me how human beings may be saved from having to enter hellish conditions in which they suffer terrible pains. Shri Shuka Uvacha. न चेदि न चेदिहैवापचितिं न चेदिहैवापचितिं यतां हसः कृतस्य कुर्यान् मन उत्तपाणिभिः ध्रुवं स वैप्रेत्य नरकानुपैति ये कीर्तिता मे भवतस्तिग्मयातनाः. Sukadeva Goswami replied, My dear king, if before one's next death, whatever impious acts one has performed in this life, with his mind, words, and body are not counteracted through proper atonement, according to the description of Manu Samhita and other Dharma Shastras, one will certainly enter the hellish planets after death and undergo terrible sufferings, as I have previously described to you. तस्मात् पुरैर्वाश्विह पापनिष्कृतौ यतेत मृत्योर्न विपद्यतात्मना दोषस्य दृष्ट्वा गुरुलाघवं यथा भिषक्चिकित्सेत रुजां निधानवित्. Therefore, before one's next death comes, as long as one's body is strong enough, one should quickly adopt the process of atonement according to the Shastra. Otherwise, one's life will be lost and reactions to his sins will increase. As an expert physician diagnoses and treats a disease according to its gravity, one should undergo atonement according to the severity of one's sins. श्रीराजोवाच दृष्टुश्रुताभ्यां यत्पापं जानन्नप्यात्मनो हितं करोति भूयो विवशाः प्रायश्चित्तमतो कथम्. Maharaja Parikshit said, one may know that sinful activity is injurious for one because he actually sees that a criminal is punished by the government and rebuked by people in general, and because he hears from scriptures and learned scholars that one is thrown into hellish conditions in his next life for committing sinful acts. Nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Therefore, what is the value of such atonement? Kvachinnivartate bhadrat kvachicharati tatpunah prayaschitamato partham manye kunjara shauchavat. Sometimes one who is very alert so as not to commit sinful acts is victimized by sinful life again. I therefore consider this process of repeated sinning and atoning to be useless. It is like bathing of an elephant, for an elephant cleanses itself by taking a full bath, but then throws dust over its head and body as soon as it returns to the land. Shri Badarayanuvacha Karmana karma nirharo nahyatyantika ihyate avidvaradhikaritvat pratyaschittam vimarshanam. Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vedavyasa, answered, My dear king, since acts meant to neutralize impious actions are also fruitive, they will not release one from the tendency to act fruitively. Persons who subject themselves to the rules and regulations of atonement are not at all intelligent. Indeed, they are in the mode of darkness. Unless one is freed from the mode of ignorance, trying to counteract one action through another is useless because this will not uproot one's desires. Thus, even though one may superficially seem pious, he will undoubtedly be prone to act impiously. Therefore, real atonement is enlightenment in perfect knowledge, Vedanta, by which one understands the supreme absolute truth. नश्नतः पत्यमेवान्नं व्याधयोऽभिभवन्ति हि एवं नियमकृद्राजन् शनैः क्षेमाय कल्पते. My dear king, if a desired person eats the pure, uncontaminated food prescribed by a physician, he is gradually cured and the infection of the disease can no longer touch him. Similarly, if one follows the regulative principles of knowledge, he gradually progresses towards liberation from material contamination. तपसा ब्रह्मचर्येण शमेन च दमेन च त्यागेन सत्यशौचाभ्यां यमेन नियमेन वा दहवाग्बुद्विजं धीरा धर्मज्ञाः श्रद्धयान्विताः क्षपित्यघं महदपि वेणुगुल्ममिवानलः. To concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. One must undergo the austerity of voluntarily giving up sense enjoyment. One must then control the mind and senses, give charity, be truthful, clean and non-violent, follow the regulative principles, and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. Thus, a sober and faithful person who knows the religious principles is temporarily purified of all sins performed with his body, words, and mind. These sins are like the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire, although their roots remain to grow again at the first opportunity. केचित् केवलया भक्त्या वासुदेवपरायणाः अघं दुन्वन्ति कार्स्न्येन निहारमिव भास्करः. Only a rare person who has adopted complete, unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful actions, with no possibility that they will revive. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. न तथा ह्यगवान् राजन् पूयेन तप आदिभिः यथा कृष्णार्पितप्राणः तत्पुरुषनिषेवया. My dear king, if a sinful person engages in the service of bona fide devotee of the Lord and thus learns how to dedicate his life unto the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be completely purified. One cannot be purified merely by undergoing austerity, penance, brahmacharya, and other methods of atonement I have previously described. सद्रीचिनो ह्यहं लोके पन्ताः क्षेमो कुतो भयः सुशीला साधवो यत्र नारायणपरायणाः. The path followed by pure devotees who are well behaved and fully endowed with best qualifications is certainly the most auspicious path in this material world. It is free from fear and it is authorized by the Shastras. Priyashchittani chirnani narayanaparammukham nanishpunanti rajendra sura kumbhamivapagaha. My dear king, as a pot containing liquor cannot be purified even if washed in waters of many rivers, non-devotees cannot be purified by processes of atonement even if they perform them very well. Sakrunmana Krishna Padaravindayor Niveshitam Tadgunaragi Yairiha Nateyamam Pashabrutascha Tadbhatan Swapne Swapnepi Pashyantihi Chirna Nishkrutaha. Although not having fully realized Krishna, persons who have even once surrendered completely unto his lotus feet and who have become attracted to his name, form, qualities, and pastimes are completely freed of all sinful reactions, for they have thus accepted the true method of atonement. Even in dreams, such surrendered souls do not see Yamaraja or his order carriers, who are equipped with ropes to bind the sinful. Atra chodaharantimam itihasam puratanam dutanam vishnuyamayoho samvadastam nibodame. In this regard, learned scholars and saintly persons describe a very old historical incident involving a discussion between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu and those of Yamaraja. Please hear of this from me. Kanyakubje dvijah kashid dhasi patirajamilah namna nashta sadacharo dhasya samsarga dushitah. In the city named Kanyakubja, there was a Brahmana named Ajamila who married a prostitute maidservant and lost all his Brahmanical qualities because of association of that low caste woman. Bandakshaihi kaitavaishchairyair garhitam vrittimastitah bibrat kutumbam mashuchir yatayamasa dehinah. This fallen Brahmana, Ajamila, gave trouble to others by arresting them, by cheating them in gambling, or by directly plundering them. This was the way he earned his livelihood and maintained his wife and children. Evam nivasatastasya lalayanasya tatsutan kalotyagan mahan rajan nashtashityayushah samaha. My dear king, when he thus spent his life in abominable sinful activities to maintain his family and many sons, 88 years of his life passed by. Tasya pravayasah putra dashatesham tu yovamaha balo narayano namna pitroscha daito bhrusham. That old man Ajamila had 10 sons, of whom the youngest was a baby named Narayana. Since Narayana was the youngest of all the sons, he was naturally very dear to both his father and his mother. Sabadda hrudayastasmin narbhake kalabhashini nirikshamanastallilam mumude jataro bhrusham. Because of the child's broken language and awkward movements, old Ajamila was very much attached to him. He always took care of the child and enjoyed the child's activities. Bhunjanaf prapiban kadan balakam snehayantritah bhojayan payayan moodo navedagatamantakam. When Ajamila chewed food and ate it, he called the child to chew and eat, and when he drank, he called the child to drink. Always engaged in taking care of the child and calling his name, Narayana, Ajamila could not understand that his own time was now exhausted and that death was upon him. स एवं वर्तमानोऽज्ञो मृत्युकाल उपस्थिते मतिं चकार तन्तनये बाले नारायणाह्वये. When the time of death arrived for the foolish Ajamila, he began thinking exclusively of his son Narayana. Sapashahastam strin drishtva purushanatidarunan vakratundan dvaromna vakratundan urdvaromna atmanam netumagatan दूरे क्रीडनकासक्तं पुत्रं नारायणाह्वयं प्लावितेन स्वरेणोच्चैर् आजुहावाकुलेन्द्रियः. Ajamila then saw 3 awkward persons with deformed bodily features, fierce and twisted faces, and hair standing erect on their bodies. With ropes in their hands, they had come to take him away to the abode of Yamaraja. When he saw them, he was extremely bewildered, and because of attachment to his child, who was playing in a short distance away, Ajamila began to call him loudly by his name. Thus, with tears in his eyes, he somehow or the other chanted the holy name of Narayana. Nishamya mriyamanasya mukatho harikirtanam bharturnama maharaja parshada sahasapatan. My dear king, the order carriers of Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, immediately arrived when they heard the holy name of their master from the mouth of the dying Ajamila, who had certainly chanted without offense because he had chanted in complete anxiety. Vikarshaton tarhrudaya dhasi pati sajamilam Yamapresyan Vishnudhuta Varaya Masurojasa. The order carriers of Yamaraja were snatching the soul from the core of the heart of Ajamila, the husband of the prostitute, but with resounding voice, the messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, forbade them to do so. Uchurnisheditastamste vaivasvatapurassaraha keyuyam pratishedharo dharmarajasya shasanam. When the order carriers of Yamaraja, the son of sun god, were thus forbidden, they replied, "Who are you, sirs, that have the audacity to challenge the jurisdiction of Yamaraja? Kasya vakuta ayataha kasmadasya nishedata kim deva upadevaya yuyam kim siddha sattamaha." Dear sirs, whose servants are you? Where have you come from? And why are you forbidding us to touch the body of Ajamila? Are you demigods from the heavenly planets? Are you sub-demigods? Or are you the best of devotees? Sarve padmapala shakshaha pita kausheya vasasaha kiritinah kundalino lasat pushkaramalinaha sarve cha Tavayasaha Sarve Nutnavayasaha Sarve Charu Chaturbujaha Dhanurnishanга Sigadam Shankachakrambujaśriyah Disho वितिमिरालोकाः कुर्वन्तस्वेन तेजसा किमर्थं धर्मपालस्य किङ्करान्नो निषेधत. The order carriers of Yamaraja said, "Your eyes are just like the petals of lotus flowers, dressed in yellow silken garments, decorated with garlands of lotuses and wearing very attractive helmets on which on your heads and earrings on your ears. You all appear fresh and youthful. Your 4 long arms are decorated with bows and quivers of arrows, and with swords, clubs, conch shells, discs, and lotus flowers. Your effulgence has dissipated the darkness of this place with extraordinary illumination. Now, sirs, why are you obstructing us?" Shri Shuka Uvacha इत्युक्ते यमदूतैस्ते वासुदेवोक्तवारिणः तान् प्रत्यूचुः प्रहस्येदं मेघनिर्हादया गिरा. Sukadeva Goswami continued, "Being thus addressed by the messengers of Yamaraja, the servants of Vasudeva smiled and spoke the following words in the voices as deep as the sound of rumbling clouds. Shri Vishnu Duta Uchuhu Yuyam Vai Dharmarajasya Yadi Nirdeshakarinaha Bhruta Dharmasya Nastatvam Yacha Dharmasya Lakshanam." The blessed messengers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, said, "If you are actually servants of Yamaraja, you must explain to us the meaning of religious principles and symptoms of irreligion. Katam stvid driyate dandaha kim vasyasthanamipsitam tahya dandhya kim karinas sarve ahosvik Kati Chindrunam." What is the process of punishing others? Who are the actual candidates for punishment? Are all karmis engaged in fruitive activities punishable, or only some of them? Yamaduta Uchuhu Veda Pranihito Dharmo Yadharmastadviparyayaha Vedo Narayana Sakshat Swayam Bhuriti Shushruma. The Yamadutas replied, "That which is prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles, and the opposite of that is irreligion. The Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, and are self-born. This we have heard from Yamaraja." Yena swadhamyami bhava rajasattvatamomayaha gunanama kriya rupair vibhavyante yatatatam. The supreme cause of all causes, Narayana, is situated in his own abode in the spiritual world, but nonetheless he controls the entire cosmic manifestation according to the 3 modes of material nature, Sattvaguna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. In this way, all living entities are awarded different qualities, different names such as Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, different duties according to the Varnashrama institution, and different forms. Thus, Narayana is the cause of the entire cosmic manifestation. Suryogniswam Maruddevaha Somah Sandhyaha Nidishaha Kam Kuh Swayam Dharma Iti Yete Dahyasya Sakshinaha. The sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, evening, day, night, directions, water, land, and Supersoul himself all witness the activities of the living entity. एतैरधर्मो विज्ञातः स्थानं दण्डस्य युज्यते सर्वे कर्मानुरोधेन दण्डमर्हन्ति कारिणः. The candidates for punishment are those who are confirmed by these many witnesses to have deviated from their prescribed regulative duties. Everyone engaged in fruitive activities is suitable to be punished, to be subjected to punishment according to his sinful acts. Sambhavanti hi bhadrani viparitani chanagaha कारिणां गुणसङ्गोऽस्ति देहवान्न ह्यकर्मकृत्. O inhabitants of Vaikunta, you are sinless, but those within this material world are all karmis, whether acting piously or impiously. Both kinds of action are possible for them because they are contaminated by the three modes of nature and must act accordingly. One who has accepted the material body cannot be inactive, and sinful action is inevitable for one acting under the modes of material nature. Therefore, all living entities within this material world are punishable. Yena yavan yata dharmo veha samihitaha sa eva tatpalam bhunkte tata tavadamutravai. In proposition to the extent of one's religious and irreligious actions in his life, one must enjoy or suffer the corresponding reactions of his karma in the next. Yateha deva pravarastraividyamupalabhyate bhuteshu gunavaichitriyat tathan yatranumiyate. O best of the demigods, we can see three different varieties of life which are due to the contamination of the three modes of nature. The living entities are thus known as peaceful, restless, and foolish, as happy, unhappy, or in between, or as religious, irreligious, and semi-religious. We can deduce that in the next life, these three kinds of material nature will simply act. वर्तमानोऽन्यतोः कालो गुणाभिज्ञापको यथा एवं जन्मान्ययोरेतद् धर्मनिदर्शनम्. Such a springtime in the present indicates the nature of springtimes in the past and future. So this life of happiness, distress, or mixture of both gives evidence concerning the religious and irreligious activities of one's past and future lives. Manasaiva pure devaha purvarupam vipashyati anumimamsate purvam manasa bhagavanajaha. The omnipotent Yamaraja is as good as Lord Brahma, for while situated in his own abode or in everyone's heart, like the Paramatma, he mentally observes the past activities of the living entity and thus understands how the living entity will act in future lives. Yatagnyastamasa yukta upaste vyaktameva hi na veda purvamaparam nashta janma smritistata. As a sleeping person acts according to the body manifested in his dreams and accepts it to be himself, so one identifies with this present body, which he acquired because of his past religious or irreligious actions, which is unable to know his past or future lives. Panchabih kurute swartan panchavedata panchabihi ekastu shodashe natrin Swayam Saptadashoshnute. After the five senses of perception, the five working senses, and the five objects of senses in the mind, which is the 16th element. After the five senses of perception, the five working senses, and the five objects of senses is the mind, which is the 16th element. Above the mind is the 17th element, the soul, the living being himself, who, in cooperation with the other 16, enjoys the material world alone. The living being enjoys three kinds of situations, namely happy, distressful, and mixed. तदेतत् षोडशकलं लिङ्गं शक्तित्रयं महत् दत्तेनु संसृतिं पुंसि हर्षशोकभयार्तिदाम्. The subtle body is endowed with 16 parts, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, the 5 objects of sense gratification, and the mind. This subtle body is an effect of the 3 modes of material nature. It is composed of insurmountably strong desires, and therefore it causes the living entity to transmigrate from one body to another in the human life, animal life, and the life as a demigod. When the living entity gets the body of the demigod, he is certainly very jubilant. When he gets a human body, he is always in lamentation. And when he gets a body of an animal, he is always afraid. In all conditions, however, he is actually miserable. His miserable condition is called samsmriti, or transmigration in the material life. देह्यह्योजित षड्वर्गो नेच्रन् कर्माणि कार्यते कोशकार इवात्मानं कर्मणाच्चाद्यमुह्यति. The foolish embodied living entity, inept at controlling his senses and mind, is forced to act according to the influence of the modes of material nature against his desires. He is like a silkworm that uses its own saliva to create a cocoon and then becomes trapped in it, with no possibility of getting out. The living entity traps himself in a network of his own fruitive activities and then can find no way to release himself. Thus he is always bewildered, and repeatedly he dies. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu nishtatya karma krita कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म गुणैः स्वाभाविकैर्बलात्. Not a single living entity can remain unengaged even for a moment. One must act by his natural tendency according to the 3 modes of material nature, because his natural tendency forcibly makes him work in a particular way. Labdva namittam व्यक्ताव्यक्तं भवत्युत यथा योनि यथा बीजं स्वभावेन बलीयसा. The fruitive activities a living being performs, whether pious or impious, are the unseen cause for fulfillment of his desires. This unseen cause is the root of the living entity's different bodies. Because of his intense desire, the living entity takes birth in a particular family and receives a body which is either like his mother or like that of his father. The gross and subtle bodies are created according to his desire. Esha prakriti sangena purushasya viparyayah asit sa eva nachiradhisha sangadviliyate. Since the living entity is associated with material nature, he is in an awkward position. But if in the human form of life, he is taught how to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, this position can be overcome. Ayam hi shruta sampannaha shila vrutta gunalayah drutavrato mrudurdhantaha satyavang mantra vichuchihi gurvagnya titi vruddhanam shushrushuranahankrutaha सर्वभूत सुहृत्साधुर्मितवाग्गनसूयकः. In the beginning, this Brahmana named Ajamila studied all the Vedic literatures. He was a reservoir of good character, good conduct, and good qualities, firmly established in executing all the Vedic injunctions. He was very mild and gentle, and he kept his mind and senses under control. Further, he was always truthful. He knew how to chant the Vedic mantras, and he was also very pure. Ajamila was very respectful of his spiritual master, the fire god, guests, and elderly members of his household. Indeed, he was free from false prestige. He was upright, benevolent to all living entities, and well behaved. He would never speak nonsense or envy anyone. एकदासौ वनं यातः पितृसन्देशकृद्विजः आदाय तत आवृत्तः फलपुष्पसमित्कृशान् ददर्श कामिनं काञ्चिञ्चुद्रं सह भुजिष्यया पीत्वा च मधुमैरेयं मदाघूर्णितनेत्रया मत्तया विश्लयन्निव्या व्यापेतं निरपत्रपं क्रीडन् तमनुगायन्तं हसन्तमनयान्तिके. Once this Brahmana, Ajamila, following the order of his father, went to the forest to collect fruits, flowers, and two kinds of grasses called Samit and Kusha. On the way home, he came upon a Sudra, a lusty fourth-class man who was shamelessly embracing and kissing a prostitute. The Sudra was smiling, singing, and enjoying as if this were proper behavior. Both the Sudra and the prostitute were drunk. The prostitute's eyes were rolling in intoxication, and her dress had become loose. Such was the condition in which Ajamila saw them. Drishtva tam kamaliptena bahuna parirambhitam jagama hruchayavasham sahasaiva vimohitaha. The Sudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamila saw her, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. Stambayannatmanatmanam yavat sattvam yatashrutam nashashaka samadatum mano madanavepitam. As far as possible, he patiently tried to remember the instructions of the Shastras, not even to see a woman. With the help of this knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires, but because of the force of Cupid within his heart, he failed to control his mind. Tannimittasmaravyaja grahagrasto vichetanah tameva manasa dhyayan swadharmadviraramaha. In the same way, the sun and the moon are eclipsed by a low planet, the Brahmana lost his good sense. Taking advantage of this situation, he always thought of the prostitute, and within a short time he took her as a servant in his house and abandoned all religious principles of a Brahmana. Tameva toshayamasa priyenartena yavata gramyair manoramai kamaih prasideta yata tata. Thus Ajamila began spending whatever money he had inherited from his father to satisfy the prostitute with various material presentations so that she would remain pleased with him. He gave up all his Brahmanical activities to satisfy the prostitute. Vipram स्वभार्यामप्रौढां kule mahati लिम्बितां विससर्जाचिरात् पापः स्वैरिण्यापाङ्गविद्धधीः. Because his intelligence was pierced by lustful glance of the prostitute, the victimized Brahmana, Ajamila, engaged in sinful acts in her association. He even gave up the company of his very beautiful young wife, who came from a very respectable Brahmana family. यतस्ततश्चोपनिन्ये न्यायतो धनम् बभारास्याः कुटुम्बिन्याः कुटुम्बं mandadhirayam. Although born of a Brahmana family, this rascal, bereft of intelligence because of the prostitute's association, earned money somehow or the other, regardless of whether properly or improperly, and used it to maintain the prostitute's sons and daughters. Yadasau शास्त्रमुल्लङ्घ्य स्वैरचार्यति गर्हितः अवर्तत चिरं कालम् अघायुरशुचिर्मलात्. This Brahmana irresponsibly spent his long lifetime transgressing all the rules and regulations of the holy scriptures, living extravagantly and eating food prepared by the prostitute. Therefore, he is full of sins, he is unclean and is addicted to forbidden activities. Tata enam dandapanaihi sakasham kruta kilbisham neshyamo kruta nirvesham yatra dandena shuddhyati. This man, Ajamila, did not undergo atonement. Therefore, because of his sinful life, we must take him into the presence of Yamaraja for punishment. There, according to the extent of his sinful acts, he will be punished and thus purified. Thus ends the chapter entitled The History of the Life of Ajamila. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.